Waaagh! Orks! In the following Voxcast, we shall explore the Ork race, their civilization, their biology, their current status throughout the galaxy, their society, such as it is, and the more notable members of this green plague. Orks are the most relentless warlike alien race in the galaxy. They are also one of the most numerous and widespread. Humanity has encountered the greenskin menace from the far reaches of the Hulis sector to the shadowy Ghoul stars, and the depths of the Segmentum Obscurus to the eastern fringe. Always hostile, always utterly anarchic, the Orks are an omnipresent threat to every race they encounter. Orks attack with little thought for self-preservation or elaborate strategy. Such concepts are hazy to them at best, and usually shoved aside in favour of the simple joy of storming headlong into battle. There's a certain nobility in that, I suppose. This is not to say Orks are nothing but base savages. However, a quirk of the greenskins' genetic makeup affords some amongst them the instinctive knowledge to build terrifying and deadly weapons of war, perform crude bionic surgery upon their wounded, project devastating psychic assaults against the foe, and lead immense war bands into the stars to crush and conquer. This, then, is the peril of the Orks. Unrelenting, innumerable, and bent upon endless battles. Only their very anarchic nature holds them back from complete galactic conquest. Might makes right. Even a single Ork is dangerous. With their hulking physiques, jutting tusks, taloned fingers, and ability to sustain catastrophic injuries, even temporary decapitation, without dying, these Xenos are natural warriors. Yet, it is the simple and resilient nature of Ork society that raises them from a civilization of mere thuggish beasts to a world-conquering, nigh-on unstoppable threat. Orks love to fight. The bigger, louder, and more anarchic the battle, the more the Orks enjoy it. They will brawl amongst one another if they cannot find any external party against whom to vent their aggression, and in doing so, they establish a simple and robust pecking order. The biggest, strongest, and most ferociously violent Ork inevitably fights their way to the top of the heap and becomes war boss. Those rivals he batters on his way up naturally fall into place as his swaggering lieutenants. The rest of the Orks follow their lead. Moreover, the more Orks fight and win, the larger and more monstrous they grow. If a new contender gets big and mean enough to challenge for rulership, they and the war boss will fight it out. The Orks see this barbarous system as right and natural, and it ensures that they are always led by the most powerful, if not the brightest, Orks amongst them. The internecine competition is inherent to every aspect of what the Orks call their culture, and it speaks to the obsessive nature of their simple psyches. Orks do not merely enjoy things, they become monomaniacal about them, whether it be fighting, going as fast as possible, setting fire to things, building contraptions, or whatever else. Once an Ork fixates upon that thing, nothing else will do. Not only this, but they are driven to prove themselves the best fighter, a speediest racer, most pyromaniacal burner of things, and so on. The tribal warfare and breakneck races continue until such time as non-Ork enemies present themselves. At this point, the Greenskins' rivalries are set aside, at least partially, to allow for all-out war against whatever unfortunate species they have encountered. Of course, Such conflicts inevitably offer their own opportunities for orcs so inclined to prove they are the biggest, meanest, and, ultimately, best. Wherever orcs are found, a strange ecosystem develops that sustains their crude society. Odd fungi spring up in profusion, as do innumerable species of misshapen beasts, commonly known to the orcs as squigs. Different strains of these creatures have different uses, from the dribble-snouted oil squigs or the oddly musical squig pipes to massive strains of riding squigs. Delicious, to the orcs at least, eating squigs, viciously fanged gnasher squigs, and countless others. Along with these useful, if surly and vicious creatures, an underclass of green-skin runts manifests itself, divided into the simple-minded snotlings, useful for fetching, carrying, squig farming, and little else, and the weary, cunning Gretchen. These Gretchen, also known as Grots, serve their bullying orc masters as servants, skivers, ammo carriers, and surgical orderlies, carrying out any job the orcs themselves can't be bothered to do. Gretchen are physically smaller and weaker than orcs, but their conniving and sneaky nature is beyond anything most orcs are capable of. This allows the Gretchen to survive and even prosper amongst orc society. It does not, however, prevent them from being constantly brutalized, eaten, subjected to ghastly industrial accidents, trampled underfoot, blown up for target practice, or herded into battle as landmine clearance. Bizarrely, to any human who has managed others, few Grots ever complain about this treatment. They accept their short, cruel lives as simply another part of the natural order of things. Besides, these spiteful creatures can always find a slower, stupider, or weaker runt to take the bullet for them in a pinch. Where the strange orcoid ecosystem springs from, or how it self-regulates, is a mystery to every other sentient race in the galaxy. Theories abound that orcs originate from some conjoined subdimension beyond real space. Which is ridiculous, of course. They are rumoured to replicate through a twisted form of mitosis, or through spores, replete with all the genetic components required to produce fresh waves of orcs, runts, and squigs, shed from their bodies. This last theory bears much credence, for it is true that unless the corpse of every last orc is burned after battle, sooner or later a planet attacked by orcs will see them emerge from the shadows to fight again. Of course, this is a risk even if the invading greenskins are properly disposed of. Should a world's defenders put up a spirited fight, word spreads somehow amongst greenskin warbands of a planet where a good scrap can be had. This brings wave upon wave of copycat invasions, often culminating in even the most stoic defense being overrun by the orcs. Orky culture. Many aspects of orcoid society seem bewildering to outsiders, yet to the greenskins they are just facts of life. One such peculiarity is that orcs use teeth, or teeth, as currency. The bigger and gnarlier the tusk, the more it is worth. Some orcs' teeth grow faster than others, but this isn't seen as unfair. After all, if an orc needs cash in a hurry, they can just smash such naturally wealthy greenskins in their gobs and gather up the resultant blood-spattered windfall. Another oddity is that orcs spontaneously develop the specialist knowledge required for their race to function. Mech boys are driven to compulsively tinker with technology, inventing everything from armor and oversized machine guns to battle tanks, energy shields, and madcap teleportation technology. Pain boys, meanwhile, instinctively know the gruesomely literal ins and outs of greenskin anatomy, They are capable of providing rough-and-ready surgery to those willing to pay their exorbitant fees and to chance their whimsical need to experiment on their patients. Then there are the runt herds, who possess a bone-deep understanding of how to rear, train and herd squigs and runts that keep Ork society functioning. Known collectively as odd boys, these sorts of specialist orcs neither know nor care where their knowledge comes from. If pressed, they might say it was in their blood. Some imperial xenobiologists theorize that this may literally be true. Orcs care little for their own history, but what oral tradition they do possess speaks of a lost caste, known as Brain Boys, who once ruled over Greenskin society, then dwindled away. Theories persist that if these beings truly did exist, then perhaps they engineered genetic knowledge into their servants before they disappeared. Certainly, this would go some way to explaining how a race of short-termists and anarchic as the Orks could not only survive, but thrive in even the most inhospitable environments in the galaxy.
The power of the Waaagh. Weird boys is alright.
Just don't stand too near 'em, lest you want your bunce to go bang like a bomb squig under a battle wagon. When Orks gather in large numbers, a very strange phenomenon manifests. A kind of gestalt energy builds, a supernatural charge like the tension before a thunderstorm, exciting the Orks' raucous and violent tendencies, even as it feeds off them. Some, amongst the Imperial Magus biologists, have hypothesized that this energy lies at the heart of the many inexplicable facets of the Ork's essential nature. Orks, for their part, couldn't care less. To them, this is simply the power of the Waaagh. A lot of odd things happen around Orks when they get themselves worked up, be it a punch-up between rival knobs, a Nasher squig-eating contest, or the build-up to a battle. Everything that feeds the greenskin's aggressive nature also causes the power of the Waaagh to flow. Raucous excitement generates more Waaagh energy, which in turn drives the Orks to even greater heights of belligerence. This aggression intensifies until fistfights become riotous civil wars, races become high-speed onslaughts, and mayhem generally ensues. Nor is violence the only way in which the power of the Waaagh manifests. It has been suggested that Ork technology works only because the greenskins themselves believe it should. This seems ludicrous, yet it is an observable fact that no other race can make Ork technology work as intended. Then there is the manner by which greenskins are drawn towards conflict, as though by some homing instinct. Is this ill chance on the part of those already beset, or as some claim, are these fresh waves lured in by the call of the Waaagh? Reports even exist of Ork warbands vanishing in storms of green energy, only to reappear again subsectors away. This could be the result of xenotech teleportation. There again, it might be something altogether stranger. If the Orks attach any significance to these occurrences, they simply put them down to a proper Orkiness, or, in some nebulous fashion, the wills of Gork and Mork. Some scholars claim that the power of the Waaagh must surely be the way in which the Orks as a species interact with the warp. Whether this is accurate or not, a particular type of odd boy acts as a focal point for all this tempestuous energy. These unfortunate beings are known as Weird Boys. The lot of the Weird Boy is not a glorious one. Their lives tend towards the short, brutal, and miserable, even by Ork standards. The reason is simple. Weird Boys have little or no control over their dubious gifts. If a Weird Boy is nearby when Waaagh energy starts flowing, a great portion of that energy flows straight into him. A storm of primitive power rages within the Weird Boy's mind, while crackling green lightning leaps from his fingertips, eyeballs, and tongue. Ectoplasm drools from his lips. Fire burns through his limbs, and agonizing pressure builds within his skull. If the weird boy does not manage to vent this accumulation on time, it causes his head to explode, as though he had stuck a stick bomb up his nose. Even worse, the resultant uncontrolled detonation of Waaagh energy may even pop the heads of a few more greenskins unlucky enough to be standing too close. Aware of the dangers that weird boys present, most Ork tribes force these odd boys to wear jangly bells and bright colours to warn of their approach. The weird boys live in isolated huts or locked away atop rickety weird boy towers, and are happy enough with this arrangement. After all, a weird boy has a vested interest in steering clear of all things explodey-headed related. Many even carry copper staves, through which they can channel away the energies of the Waaagh, should the build-up become too much. However, when war calls, most war bosses look at their weird boys as convenient, if short-lived, artillery pieces, and so insist on them being dragged into battle. Here the weird boys vent their gathered power in the form of heaving spumes of ectoplasmic power vomit, skull-bursting beams of green energy, supernatural, loud roars, and all manner of other spectacular and destructive phenomena. Where most weird boys would quite like to be left alone, some become addicted to the danger and exhilaration of battle, revelling in the rush of venting their built-up powers. These so-called warpheads seek out the very thickest press of battle, intentionally supercharging their tortured brains and unleashing devastating shockwaves of supernatural force upon the foe. Equally, there are those Orks who, possibly due to some quirk in their biology, are a few squigs short of a swarm, so to speak. Known collectively as Mad Boys, they behave in strange and erratic ways, wearing all manner of overly colourful and outlandish garb. They have also been known to wield everything from dismembered limbs and metal chair legs to stuffed squigs in battle. Mad Boys are drawn to weird boys, despite the risks they present, and, whether they like it or not, often form impromptu retinues for the luckless odd boys. When enough Orks gather in one place, a great migration often occurs. This is either caused by the greenskins' innate desire for battle, or triggered by some cosmic catastrophe, such as impending warp storms or the death of a star. Orks, in their billions, swarm into space beneath the leadership of an almighty warlord, their hordes boasting towering war effigies, swarms of battle tanks, stampedes of rampaging squigs, sky-darkening armadas of ramshackle aircraft, and countless other terrifying weapons. Being the straightforward creatures they are, Orks call such a migratory invasion force a Waaagh. Each such immense army is named after its warlord, for example, Waaagh or Waaagh. Everyone is capable of crushing entire systems, even subjugating subsectors if they gather enough momentum and numbers. And, typically, each is born through space aboard enormous agglomerate vessels known as space hulks. Orks do fashion their own spacecraft, of course, from small but deadly ram ships to much larger kill cruisers and heavily customized asteroid junk ships known as rocks. However, any Waaagh worth its name employs vast tractor beams to capture a space hulk, or free, before setting off. These immense ghost ships are in truth the remains of multiple vessels lost upon the tides of the warp and gradually fused together by the energies of that terrible realm. Most species consider space hulks to be harbingers of doom, for they are often infested with monstrous beings and drop from the warp without warning, bringing death and destruction. For Orks, however, they are a gift, as greenskins get the fun of fighting and beating whatever other creatures may have infested their chosen vessel. Orks don't worry about where they themselves are going. They simply strap extra engines and guns onto their chosen hulk, point it at the nearest warp storm, and then take the plunge. Greenskins trust to Gork and Mork that they will emerge from the Empyrean realm near, if not on top of, some settled planetary system that they can then invade. The Ork gods, Gork and Mork.
or Mork and Gork?
Mork. One of the Orks' two great green gods. Mork is said to be cunning,
But brutal.
rather than simply bashing his enemies over the head. Mork would rather sneak up on them with his enormous club behind his back, then bash them over the head. He is, of course, a deity of loud and apocalyptic destruction. He just likes to be a little bit sneaky about it. From Mork flow such notions as teleporters and blasters, complex flying machines, tractor beams, and custom force fields. Were a wily greenskin such as a commando to name his weapon, he would likely call them something like the Claws of Mork, or Mork's Fangs. Gork, the more direct and belligerent of the Orks' two gods, if such a thing is possible. Gork is said to be brutal but cunning. He will not stand for anything he sees as mucking about, which is generally interpreted by Orks as anything from bothering to formulate a battle plan to using high-tech weaponry, or fighting for any reason other than the simple joy of violence. Gork's influence is most felt amidst the ground-pounding, brass-knuckled masses of Goff Clan infantry, and the thunderous hunting stampedes of the beast snaggers. His war cry is the snarl of battle wagon engines, the roar of cannon fire, and the bestial bellowing of charging boys. Gork is the divine equivalent of a boot to the teeth, a brace of stick bombs through a stained glass window, or a rocket-propelled asteroid dropped onto an enemy city. In short, he epitomizes the most fundamental essence of what it means to be an Ork.
The old ways. Live off the land. Go to find war. Kill what comes close. The old ways is best.
Orks care nothing for the deeper questions, and yet many of them possess a bone-deep sense of tradition, manifesting as a conservative mistrust of anything they see as un-Orky. In multiple cases, of course, this is simply because the Orks in question are too dim to see the value in new or complex ideas. But being wrong never stopped an Ork arguing his case with his fists. Even the densest greenskins can wrap their heads around the concept of gathering in massive mobs, bellowing while charging headlong at the enemy, then beating the foe to a bloody pulp. Such so-called green tides lay at the heart of many Ork warbands. Their efficacy cannot be denied, even if they leave something to be desired in terms of subtlety and the survival of most of the Orks involved. Countless enemy battle lines have fallen to the steamroller charge of several hundred belligerent greenskins. In sufficient numbers, these most traditional of Orkish offensives can carry fortresses, hive cities, or even entire worlds. Married to such tactics, the more traditional Orks wield straightforward weapons. The ubiquitous choppers, for example, are often no more than a hefty handle with a heavy metal axe head on the end, or even just a club with several sharp rivets hammered through them. Meanwhile, such weapons as sluggers, shooters, and big shooters are all variations on simple, rapid-firing, large-caliber firearms. As important to an Ork as a gun's accuracy or lethality is its volume. The louder the din, the more effective their owner considers the weapon to be, and so, perversely, the more effective they prove to be. The racket a gun makes, its rate of fire, and how much armour it can punch through are all conflated by Orks into the catch-all term Dakka. The more Dakka a gun has, the better it is. Numbers, brawn, swarming runts, and squigs, solid and reliable weapons and armour, these are what the more down-to-earth Orks believe win wars. The black-clad brutes of the Goff Clan and the leathery old traditionalists of the Snakebite Clan typify such viewpoints, albeit allowing for smatterings of piston-powered claws, slab-sided battle tanks, and brutish combat walkers. The better to clobber the foe, of course. One subculture in particular epitomizes the embracing of the so-called old ways, fused with the wonders of Orky bionic technology, the beast snaggers. There isn't a problem that beast snaggers don't think can be fixed with a squig. Indeed, the dangerous beasts appear in such profusion around these orcs that no beast snagger is really considered one of the lads until he's lost a limb or two to their snapping jaws, or at least wound up with some truly magnificent bite scars to show off. Beast snaggers breed countless varieties of squigs. Squigs for riding, squigs for eating, if they don't eat the orcs first. Squigs from which to squeeze oil. Squigs to send scampering or flapping off with hastily scrawled message glyphs. Frond-trailing little squigs to wear like topknots. And boggle-eyed varieties to wire into targeting systems of their guns. These squigs mingle with the crude war paint and alien pelt armour of the beast snaggers to lend them an especially feral and ferocious appearance. Every orc subculture finds its roots in some obsession that enough like-minded greenskins share. For the beast snaggers, this is the thrill of the hunt. They live for spotting, running down, cornering and then clobbering the biggest and most dangerous prey, before claiming trophies to prove their might. The beast snaggers roam endlessly in search of this thrill, as nomads, thundering across plain and desert, through forest, swamp, and ruined urban jungle. To facilitate their hunt, beast snaggers stay highly mobile. They rarely halt for any length of time, even eating, sleeping, and practicing their crude, bionic surgeries on the move. A typical beast snagger tribe has, at its heart, one or more rugged scrap-iron kill rigs or hunter rigs. Pulled along by snorting trample squigs, these careening land barges swarm with burly beast snagger boys, always raring to get their tusks and claws into their next quarry. Around the rigs swarm packs of the tribe's best hunters, mounted on ferocious, often cybernetically enhanced, squig hogs. The tribe's bosses lead the charge astride hard-headed smasher squigs and massive, terrifying squigosaurs. Meanwhile, the tribe's grots, known to the beast snaggers as saddle gits, and viewed rather like favoured pets, hang on where they can, leap nimbly between galloping squigs and generally do their best to avoid being trampled underfoot, or hoof. There can be no hiding the approach of a beast snagger stampede. Vast dust clouds rise in their wake, and the ground shakes as though terrified beneath pounding claws, hooves, and iron-shod wheels. Such warning does little to help the enemy, however, because once these hulking greenskins and their steeds have built up a head of steam, there's little that can stop them. Beast snaggers consider anything large and dangerous enough, or numerous enough in a pinch, to be worthy prey. Rampaging xenofauna, monstrous war beasts such as tyrannid carnifexes or heretical demon engines, heavily armoured, super-heavy combat walkers, and even towering battle titans. Beast snaggers will have a go at bringing all of these down with single-minded ferocity. Their favoured tactic is to employ the harpoon and chain weapons they call stickers, hurling or firing them at their prey until they festoon its hide. Then, while some of the beast snaggers hang on to the chains and stop the straining quarry from getting away, the rest descend in a brutal swarm to hack, saw, and rip their victims to bits. It is because of such contests of strength that the average beast snagger is especially big and brawny. Few can forget the sight of a mob of these hulking monsters, digging in their heels, flexing their corded green muscles, then winning a tug of war with a revving battle tank long enough for their mates to saw its tracks off. The beast snaggers do not hunt completely at random. Not only do many possess a keen eye for tracking prey, but they also have their war boys to guide them. These primitive, wild, and remarkably unsavoury weird boys channel the Waaagh in its most feral and animalistic form. They employ their pseudo-shamanic powers to glean visions they believe are sent by Gork and Mork, guiding them to the best prey. So crucial are the Boys' visions to Beast Snagga society that they're afforded more respect than typical Weird Boys. Though dangerous and unstable, they are treated like oracles. Many are even afforded places in towers atop their tribe's kill rigs. From such vantage points, Boys can best spy out the prey from afar, while also remaining a nice safe distance from any orc who may wish to keep their craniums unexploded. Many Beast Snaggas belong to the Snakebite Clan, for their ways are naturally compatible. However, Beast Snaggas of every clan and stripe roam the stars, and many a war boss seeks to include them in their Waaagh. After all, if nothing else, one simply has to follow the stampede to find a good fight.
Orky Know Wotz.
Ork technology is as unreliable as a grot on guard duty. It has a nasty habit of blowing up or behaving in ways its inventors never envisaged, and has an impact on its users' life expectancy equivalent to climbing into a squig-off pen while drunk. On good old grog. None of this stops many orcs from enthusiastically embracing the dubious wonders of what they call Orky Know Wotz. Mechs, mech boys, mechanics, spanners. The orcs have many names for their ever-inventing, ever-experimenting engineering caste. They are the source of every green-skin contraption, a vehicle and weapon more complex than a plank, with a nail bashed through it. Yet, for all their instinctive knowledge of how to bodge together every sort of madcap machinery, mechs are no less anarchic than the rest of their race. Their workshops are death traps, surrounded by heaps of junk that might come in handy, and stuffed to overflowing with oversized tools. Half-built weaponry, chain-dangled engine blocks, and discarded, often live, ordnance. Grot assistants, known as oilers, pick their way through the tangle, doing their best to assist their master while avoiding a sudden and explosive demise. Mechs don't tend to work from plans or blueprints, instead bolting together whatever feels right. As such, no two of their inventions is ever exactly the same, especially as mechs are driven to constantly tinker and experiment with new ideas. They will gladly do custom jobs for other orcs in return for payment in teeth or looted scrap. However, customers must be prepared to receive something rather different to what they originally ordered. Sluggers that fire glowy explosive shells, power claws that also shoot flame, armor that teleports its wearer about at random, battle wagons with protruding sword arms and flickering power fields. All these and countless other mad inventions may emerge from a mech's workshop. The array of technologies mechs spontaneously invent is truly incredible. From unstable energy weapons, matter-dragging tractor beams, and orc-portable rocket packs, to teleportation tech, warp tunnel projectors, electromagnetic beamers, and Mork alone knows what else. Mechs can make it all. Yet the great tragedy for their species, not that the orcs see it this way, is that for all their wondrous abilities, the mechs only have the imagination to employ their technologies as weapons of war. They have the potential to make their species one of the most advanced in the galaxy, yet they simply render it one of the most dangerous, both to themselves and to everyone else. Mechs and pain boys often collaborate, much to the misfortune of everything in arm's reach. When orcs' limbs, organs, or occasionally heads get lost in battle and require bionic replacement, it is the mech who fashions the cyborg components and the pain boy who fits them. Only amidst beast snagga tribes is this rule broken, as their own pain bosses manage to fulfill something of both roles. That said, pain bosses also prefer to work on squigs rather than orcs, and frankly, most of their greenskin patients would prefer it that way too. When mech boys and pain boys really get working on collaborative efforts, a dread mob is often the result. Mech boys fashion combat walkers known as Killa cans and death dreads. Then the pain boys work with them to wire volunteers into the war engines. Grots into Killa cans, and orcs into death dreads. This is often a one-way trip, involving a great deal of amputation and crude bionics. That doesn't stop greenskins queuing up for the process. After all, it appears a shortcut to being the biggest and the baddest. By the time the new pilots grasp how horribly restrictive it is being wired into an engine-driven armoured dustbin, it is a bit too late. That being said, with a bossy enough big mech or two to herd them into battle, these dread mobs are clanking, smoke-belching nightmares for the enemy. Their guns, snapping claws and roaring saws, have broken more than a few battle lines. Another high-tech and all too infamous subculture within the Orc society is the cult of speed, known also as speed freaks. These are orcs who have become completely addicted to racing into battle as fast as possible. This they do aboard whatever scrap metal speedsters or stripped-back, upgunned warbikes they can get their claws on. Speed freaks gather together into sizable mobs and squadrons during the rare lulls between open warfare. They engage in raucous, breakneck races around, or often right through, their tribe's encampment. The majority of orcs consider such races the height of entertainment, wagering merely on which speed freak will make it over the finishing line first, or who will end up on fire in a ditch. The craziest speed freaks of all become flyboys, taking to the skies in mech-built combat aircraft, tending towards a rugged construction, minimal safety features, and a remarkable array of raggedly inaccurate firepower. These craft cause utter carnage amidst the foe, at least until they blow up and fall out of the sky. Really ambitious big mechs build bigger and bigger war machines. Battle wagons and gun wagons are comparable to other races' tanks and transports, albeit festooned with all manner of random Dakka and close quarters weaponry. Bigger still are the battle fortresses, rolling nightmares often built off the looted wrecks of Imperial super-heavy tanks. Then there are the war effigies, made to resemble the Ork gods. Even the smallest of these war engines, the Gorkanauts and Morkanauts, are fat-bellied, gun-studded, heavy-footed engines of death, the size of an armoured bastion. Bigger still are Stompers, whose engine rooms and gun decks swarm with Orks and Grots, and whose firepower can decimate entire armies. The biggest of all are the Gargants, Titan-class war engines, whose earth-shaking tread and deadly gaze can mean the death of worlds. Tribes, clans and warbands. Humans, pointy ears and that, waste all this time thinking about stuff, and while they's busy doing that, us orcs is busy crumping them. The average orc has as much time for formalised systems of military organisation as he does for washing regularly or learning to read. As with every other aspect of their society, such divisions are as rough and ready as they are instinctive, and the orcs waste no time examining their whys and wherefores. The most basic unit of organisation that can be applied to orcs is the tribe. Simply put, this is every orc that lives in a particular area and fights beneath the Waaagh banner of the local war boss. Tribes include every squig, runt, orc, war engine and odd boy, making a claim to whatever territory they roam across. Some tribes build sprawling scrap forts and junk-strewn encampments. Such places typically boast everything from mechs workshops and pain boy clinics to squig pens, weird boy towers, scrap iron bunkers, rutted racetracks, and the fecal-stinking, fungus-infested ablution pits known as the Drops. Other tribes stay always on the move, especially those largely or solely made up of speed freaks or beast snaggers. Such tribes may live off the land, inasmuch as they smash everything to bits and thieve or eat whatever they want from the wreckage. Entire mobile fortresses and encampments have also been witnessed, dragged along by huge teams of trample squigs or motorised track units. The clans stretch throughout all of Ork society, right across the galaxy, regardless of boundaries such as tribal allegiance. They are most closely analogous to societal castes, being no way organised or centralised. An Ork instinctively knows which clan he belongs to. There is no conscious choice, but rather a communality of instinctive inclinations, outlooks, and philosophies, not dissimilar to the spontaneous knowledge of the odd boys. Even uttering such fiddly-sounding words around Orks would likely move them to violence, of course. If they bother to put a name to it at all, they just describe all this as their clan culture. Orks belonging to the same clan favour the wearing of similar colours, attaching superstitious significance to them. Blue is lucky. Black is no nonsense. Red makes things go faster, and so on. Orks being orks, these beliefs literally manifest themselves. An ork daubed in blue war paint may escape death time and again due to improbably fortunate ricochets, misfiring weapons, and the like, while a truck painted bright red really will travel faster than one in any other hue. Clans are more than just a matter of shared aesthetics, of course. Orks from the same clan all favour particular ways of war. They tend to have the same outlook on life, the galaxy, and everything, and may even exhibit particular unifying physical characteristics. The Goff Clan favour black garb, sometimes decorated with white checks or jags. They tend towards an especially hulking build, boasting many knobs and particularly furious war bosses, and favour straightforward and tremendously violent solutions to every problem. The evil Sunz clan produces the most speed freaks. Garbing themselves in bright reds and oranges, they race into battle aboard ramshackle convoys of speeding vehicles, or else run alongside, yelling at the top of their lungs. All Orks hate the Badmoons clan, except of course the Badmoons themselves. Show-offs, one and all. Badmoons have the fastest growing teeth. This makes them the richest Orks going, a fact they delight in flaunting with their rich yellow garb, showy gold jewellery, and a preponderance of over-the-top guns. Deathskulls are well known to be unapologetic thieving gits. Draping and smearing themselves in lucky blue, they take a light-fingered approach to ownership, viewing battle as only the first stage in looting the corpses of their enemies and their dead mates. More dubious still are the Bloodaxe clan, who all other Orks view askance. They side-eye them. Observing such practices as wearing camouflage and formulating battle plans, these rather unorky Orks have a particular fondness for sneaky commandos, mobs of tank busters, and squadrons of very large tanks, as well as peak caps. Snakebite Clan Orks are traditionalists, from whom stem the greatest number of beast snaggers. They wear leathery primitive garb and eschew the more complex Orky technologies. Those Orks who do not fit into a clan quickly become outcasts. This status in itself leads them to selfish acquisitiveness, earning them reputations as nasty pieces of work. Whether they are exiled or leave voluntarily, such greenskins become mercenary freebooters, fighting for plunder and riches while gladly allying themselves to anyone willing to pay. In battle, the closest Orks get to forming unified squads is what is called a mob. Like-minded Orks band together, usually under the violent command of a boss nob, then surge towards the enemy en masse. Some mobs, those kitted out with especially unpredictable high-tech weaponry, may instead be led by spanners. These talented greenskins use their mechanical skills to keep their fellows' guns operational, and to stop them spontaneously igniting. A warband, in comparison, is the catch-all term for an Ork army of almost any size. The smallest may include just a couple of mobs, being bossed about by a big mech or warboss, with aspirations of grandeur. Otherwise, a warband might represent a portion of a tribe's strength, sent out to recce, scavenge, or just cause trouble. At their largest, warbands may contain the combined might of multiple tribes, drawn together and fighting as one, beneath the biggest warboss they've got. Some warbands include mobs from several different clans. Others may come solely from a single clan. A warboss or big mech gathering up all the lands he considers the best, before setting out to beat up all comers. Then, there are warbands that tend towards particular cults in what passes for strategy. Beyond cults of speed and beast stagger stampedes, there are also blitz brigades, made up of orc tanks and the boys who ride them. Storm boy corps that darken the skies with their hurtling bodies. Dakka divisions that mass big guns, grok crude artillery, and many more besides. Only when enough warbands are drawn together under a single, almighty warlord does a real Waaagh begin. Dork clans, and the biggest gits in 'em. Freebooterz, a clan for the clanless. Some orcs don't fit into normal green-skinned society. They might be a bit too mean and spiteful. They might have funny ideas about shiny loot being more valuable than teeth. Some can't get their heads around the idea that those bigger or meaner than them are their natural betters. Such greenskins soon find themselves outcast, becoming mercenary freebooters instead. Freebooters are the sneakiest, nastiest, and most self-interested greenskins in the galaxy. They are adventurers, rogues, and mercenaries who rebel even against the rough-and-ready strictures of orc society. No small feat in itself. Any orc can become a freebooter, from knobs to weird boys and speed freaks to beast staggers. All it takes is to behave in so aberrant a fashion that the tribe rejects the un-orky weirdos in their midst. Alternatively, some greenskins who find themselves unable to fit into their tribe wind up striking out into the stars after their own ill-gotten gains. Such an exit is rarely harmonious, and many burgeoning freebooter crews have left their tribe's encampment in flames at their heels. Most freebooters wind up exiled for a string of misdeeds that finally gets too much for their warboss to tolerate. Many are the bad mechs who build a contraption that blew up half their tribe, who applied unstable custom jobs to an excessive number of their tribe's wagons, or looted the warboss's personal ride. Freebooter pain boys, often bad docs, may have performed one too many unwanted amputations, gotten a nasty reputation for excessive extortion of their patients, or wired up a faulty death dread that rampaged through the warboss's hut. There are orc bikers who wouldn't stop flattening their tribe's encampment with their races. Freebooter boy mobs, kicked out for mean-spirited thieving and spiteful backlashes against their biggers and betters, and of course, countless mobs of freebooter flash gits. After all, even the most tolerant orcs get sick of their bragging after a while. The irony of freebooter culture is that even though these greenskins have rejected the traditional orc ways, they still instinctively mob up with others of their kind. So do freebooter warbands accumulate like void barnacles on a kill cruiser's hull. These motley and mercenary hordes are piratical in nature. They roam the galaxy's space lanes at random, preying on everything from cargo ships and warcraft to isolated colonies and naval space stations, or anything else the orcs deem worth a go. Uniquely amongst their kind, freebooters don't fight for the simple joy of fighting. This isn't to say they don't enjoy a good punch-up, preferably fueled by too much fungus grog. but they typically expect a fiscal reward for their efforts. Partly, this is practicality. Shorn of their tribes, freebooters need to claw together all the loot they can to keep going. Mostly, though, it is because these greenskins are naturally more acquisitive and rapacious than the rest of their kind. Their war bosses, often self-titled as captains, admirals, whatever other dimly understood term may have caught their fancy, stay in charge not through brawn alone, but with the understanding of two simple principles. Firstly, that as long as the loot keeps flowing, their lads are less likely to challenge their rule. Secondly, that freebooters are ferociously competitive and always out to prove that they're better than their crewmates. The cunning captain keeps his lads busy, trying to one-up each other, and thus avoids them getting it into their heads to one-up him. Freebooters' victims, of course, see none of this. They know only the horde of especially avaricious orcs, clad in a panoply of wild, piratical motley, come to murder and plunder, all in their path. There is no telling exactly how a freebooter warband will be made up, as they comprise whatever misfits, rogues and outcasts they've gathered up on their travels. But one thing is for sure, finding yourself in their path is never a pleasant experience.
Kaptin Badrukk, the freebooter king.
Seems to me you've got yourself an Umi problem here. Don't look good, you's getting beat up by such weedy little gits, does it? But don't worry, because the captain is going to sort it for you. For a price, of course. We'll start with that big shiny wagon you've been riding around in, and we'll go from there, eh? Kaptin Badrukk, to Warlord Borgog. Kaptin Badrukk is the most infamous freebooter of all. A legend amongst his own cutthroat subculture, Badrukk has plied the stars in his steel-jawed kill cruiser, the Black Tooth, for several blood-soaked decades. The captain leads a vicious band of villains known as Badrukk's Flashkids, and sets a brutal example of how to freeboot as Gork and Mork intended. Badrukk's personal appearance is ostentatious in the extreme. He's festooned in medals taken from slain Imperial admirals, boasts a gob full of teeth plated with an adamantine alloy and gold, stolen from the Palace of Undying Light, and has gilded armour that is tarnished only by the blood of his most recent victims. Badrukk's back banners proclaim his supreme abilities as a fighter and a conqueror. A lead-lined greatcoat protects Badrukk from the radiation generated by his beloved weapon, the Ripper, a gun so dangerous that merely standing near it is tantamount to a death sentence. The weapon once belonged to the Ogryn bodyguard of a subsector governor. The captain has since modified it to fire unstable plasma canisters instead of heavy-caliber bullets, so that each hit detonates with incredible power. Badrukk was chased out of his tribe by his fellow Badmoons on charges of having too many teeth for his own good. From the day of his exile, the captain's accomplishments have far outstripped those of his fellow freebooter war bosses. He has slain a Tyranid Norn Queen, outshot a Tau Hunter Cadre, and even harpooned a Void Whale, or so it is claimed. He is also an excellent strategist for an Ork, advising his employers in battle tactics before bullying them into giving him the lion's share of the loot. Badrukk's attacks have become especially daring in recent years, making use of teleporter strikes to land his flash gits precisely where they need to be. Directed force bubble weaponry traps enemies in the kill zone with them. This is thanks to the efforts of Bad Mech Mogrok, a flashy Badmoon who was rescued by the captain from the disastrous conclusion of the war on Alaric Prime. Badrukk has been wringing Mogrok dry for his technological know-what's ever since. With the grudging aid of his pet Badmech, Badrukk successfully raided the Necron treasure world of Tanhotep, ransacked several planets in the Imperium Nihilus, and defeated the so-called Grand Guard of Chaos, Warlord Nazdreg the Unrepentant.
The Bad Moons. Too many teeth for their own good.
Bad Moon Orks have a natural advantage in that their teeth, and thus their wealth, grow at an exponential rate compared to all other greenskins. Never backward in flaunting their dental affluence, Bad Moon Orks tend towards garishly coloured garb, copious golden piercings, and overly showy, but usually lethal, custom war gear of every sort. The chosen colour of the Bad Moons clan is bright yellow, which Orks traditionally associate with great wealth. Bad Moon Orks plaster yellow onto everything they own, wear and ride to war. Furthermore, they will merely ransack the temples and cultural centres of other races in order to steal everything golden they can get their claws on. Such loot is displayed as further trophies of wealth, or else melted down to make everything from nose rings to gold-plated battle wagon rams, or even gold bullets for sluggers. The slight drawback to such enthusiastic ostentation is that the average Bad Moon's warband can be seen coming from miles away. There are recorded instances of their garish hordes being spotted with the naked eye from low orbit. Of course, the Bad Moons don't mind this. If the enemy knows where they are, they reason that a good fight will be coming their way all the quicker. Many Orks from other clans mock Bad Moons for being all flash and no substance. Snakebites in particular are given to implying that the Bad Moons' wealth makes them soft. The truth is that Bad Moons are just as tough and violent as the rest of their race. They are equally as capable of kicking their enemies' teeth down their throats. They just like to be eye-wateringly visible while they're doing it. Thanks to their ever-present funds, Bad Moons tend to be well-fed, highly motivated, belligerently confident, and laden down with enough Dakka to take the legs out from under a charging Imperial Knight. Their warbands are particularly known for their overwhelming firepower. A plethora of custom shooters and crackling energy weapons are often in evidence alongside tricked-out battle wagons, squadrons of aircraft, so laden down with ordnance that they can barely get airborne, and of course, towering yellow stompers. More Bad Moons become flash gits than any other Orks, though even this clan gets sick of the swaggering, overgunned braggarts, and kick them out soon enough. Many Bad Moon war bosses have plagued the galaxy, always feared for their firepower and high-tech killing capabilities. In recent years, the most infamous of these Bad Moon warlords has been Nazdreg Ug Urdgrub. In most ways, Nazdreg is a typical Bad Moon warlord. He is rich, ostentatious, overindulgent, and overweight. He loves nothing better than to take his warband raiding, both to garner extra wealth and prove how well equipped his boys are. In one way, however, Nazdreg is anything but ordinary, for he is easily the most cunning and intelligent battlefield commander the Bad Moons have ever had. Fortunately for the Imperium, Nazdreg is only interested in wealth, for if he ever worked up the energy to lead a Waaagh, there is no doubt that he would be an adversary every bit as dangerous as Ghazghkull Thraka. As it is, however, Nazdreg is an irritation rather than a deadly peril. This being said, Nazdreg leads a large and extremely powerful warband which has devastated at least 11 Imperial worlds, and defeated, or outwitted, all the Imperial forces that have so far been sent against him. Nazdreg's base of operations is a huge space hulk named Nazdreg Ug Urdgrub in the Ork tongue, and given the Imperial codename, thankfully, Skylar. Mechs that the Bad Moons employ have managed to gain some kind of control over the Space Hulk's movements, and the ease with which Nazdreg has outmaneuvered and escaped pursuing Imperial fleets would certainly seem to imply that more than mere chance and the luck of the warp have been involved. Nazdreg came to notoriety from this point of view of the Imperium due to his short-term alliance with Ghazghkull during the Pacino campaign, and his actions during the fall of Medusa 5. His alliance with Thraka was a short-term affair, and he has been recently busying himself raiding Imperial mining worlds in search of a warlord titan, apparently. Nevertheless, he has a Vermilion clearance kill order placed upon him from the Order Xenos at all times. Still, they haven't caught him yet, and neither have the Dark Angels been able to enact their vengeance for the events of Pacino. The Evil Sunz Clan.
Red ones go faster.
The Orks of the Evil Sunz Clan feel an undeniable urge to travel as fast as they can. They care little whether this be in the breakneck races around their tribe's encampment, riding bikes and speedsters headlong into battle, or as part of an immense speed war tearing across the galaxy in search of conquest. No other clan can match the Evil Sunz for raw speed. These Orks are completely obsessed with the notion of acquiring the fastest, shootiest vehicle they can, and then racing across the battlefield in it, while howling like absolute loons. Their clan colours are lurid red and fiery orange, because any Ork with sense knows that vehicles painted in these remarkable colours, and Orks clad head to toe in them, will travel faster than those that aren't. Younger, or less well-established Evil Sunz form into excitable mobs. These either dash towards the foe at wild speed, or else pile aboard their mates' trucks and souped-up battle wagons, the better to race to war amidst the rush of the wind and the roar of powerful engines. Those Evil Sunz who have managed to scrape enough teeth together inevitably blow them on something mechanized, fast, and painted the very reddest shade of red. A bewildering assortment of half-track war bikes, teleporting combat dragsters, gun-festooned speed wagons, overcharged trucks, and other vehicular nightmares stream from the mech's workshops of the Evil Sunz Clan, all customized with a strange variety of personalized improvements. It is not uncommon for the richest Evil Sunz to drive contraptions powered by jet thrusters, bladed propellers, or squig oil fusion engines. These vehicles boast everything from crackling energy blasters and nose drills to go-faster buttons that double as igniters for fat squig dung cigars. Evil Sunz tend towards a nomadic nature, for they can rarely stay still or concentrate on one thing for very long. Not all speed freaks are Evil Sunz, but the vast majority of Evil Sunz will become speed freaks sooner or later. In battle, their ragged formations are a nightmare for most enemies. They move fast and unpredictably, whooping and roaring as they hurtle around their foes' flanks or tear through their battle lines and out the other side, amidst clouds of fumes and dust. Evil Sunz particularly relish a good chase, as it really lets them open up their throttles. Thus, foes who seek to flee their attack or even to engage in hit-and-run warfare often find themselves bewildered participants in a life-or-death race against these madly grinning Orks. Wazzdakka Gutsmek. Wazzdakka is the creator of the fabled bike of the Apocalypse, and is said to be the greatest Ork biker of them all. Greenskin legend tells of how Wazzdakka was accused of cheating when he won the race of the burning wheels, and of how he levelled his tribe's settlement with his Dakka cannons in response to this accusation, and then roared off in disgust. From that day forth, or so the story goes, he has roamed the stars as a deadly war biker for hire. It is said that what began as aimless wandering has taken on overtones of a holy pilgrimage. More speed freaks flock to Wazzdakka's banner with every battle and race he wins. Many mad-eyed speed freaks claim that Wazzdakka is the greatest speed boss of them all. After all, not only do the stories paint him as phenomenally fighty, spectacularly shooty, and ruinously rich, but he is also by far and away the fastest orc around. The devotees of Gutsmek claim that he will lead a smoke-belching unstoppable Waaagh from one end of space to the other. This is Wazzdakka's speed Waaagh. The speed Waaagh that inspired all others and the greatest race in the history of time. Most orcs have heard of Wazzdakka Gutsmek, for his legend has spread through the tribes from one orc empire to the next. Few can claim truthfully to have seen him, but a legend persists among the knobs and war bosses of the cult of speed that if an orc travels fast enough, he may spot Wazzdakka up ahead, a hurtling figure upon the horizon, who can be chased all the way to the best fights in the galaxy. Wazzdakka is making his way to Armageddon. The Bloodaxe Clan. Cunning Gits. The Bloodaxe Clan put great store in things that other orcs consider dubious at best. They make no secret of their admiration for the strategies and tactics of other races, going so far as to formulate battle plans and wear crude camouflage. Of course, they still do all this in a very orky fashion. Orcs of the Bloodaxe Clan display a compulsion to apply strategy and tactics to their battles. Being orcs, such approaches are invariably direct and extremely violent, and often coloured more by what will be the most enjoyable way to get stuck in, than what is ultimately the most expedient course. That said, for the average Bloodaxe, there is no greater joy than catching the enemy in a ferocious ambush, pulverizing them with a headlong armor charge, or proving to the mocking gits of the other clans that the Bloodaxe way works best. Fact is, the rest of Orkdom will never be convinced that the Bloodaxe's strange behavior makes them anything other than untrustworthy cowards. Their ways are just too alien. Bloodaxes deploy commando mobs to sever enemy communications channels and blow up supply depots, employing high-altitude flyovers and deathcopter scouting to determine where the enemy are in advance. Most shocking to other orcs, Bloodaxes will even attack the enemy where their lines are weak, instead of charging headlong into the meat grinder of the biggest and best available fight. They fail to grasp that the Blood Angels like a rowdy punch-up, just as much as any other greenskin. They just prefer the odds to be in their favour when they get stuck in. The Bloodaxe Clan has no overarching colour. Instead, they prefer to drape themselves in as many camouflage schemes as possible. They grasp that such measures are intended to conceal their warriors, but, being orcs, ascribe a talismanic, rather than literal value to the practice. This leads to Bloodaxes going to war in all manner of garish patterns that bear little resemblance to the landscape around them. It has also seen them paint even airborne or super-heavy war engines in all manner of outlandish camouflage patterns, reasoning that the busier and more thickly applied the scheme, the better the vehicle will be hidden. The actual value of such concealing measures is hard to quantify, but anyone who has seen a 50-foot stomper lumbering towards them, daubed in red and blue tiger stripes, doesn't forget the terrifying sight in a hurry. On the wild frontiers of the Imperium, it is not wholly unheard of for Bloodaxes to offer their services as mercenaries to isolated Imperial worlds. As payment, they typically demand tanks, guns, and other munitions, which are often turned first upon their employers' enemies and then, inevitably, upon the employers themselves. Showing the slightest sign of weakness to the Bloodaxes is never good for one's long-term survival prospects. The orcs of the other clans might look at the Bloodaxes askance, but these cunning greenskins are a terrible shock for their enemies. Many foes have simply refused to believe in any notion of strategically capable orcs until it's too late. For their part, the Bloodaxes don't care what anyone else thinks of them. They prize results over reputation, and are more than happy to let the other clans take the brunt of a battle's punishment, whilst they use the distraction to seize victory. I offer the following as an example of the unique attributes of the Blood Axes: the Squigback Raiders. Blood Axe Beast Snaggers are generally more progressive than those belonging to other clans. Alongside their squigs and rigs, they often field rumbling gun wagons and half-track trucks. Of course, many of these are themselves powered by squigs that haul them along or run in huge generator wheels to provide motive power. Blood Axe Speed Snaggers also go to the trouble of breeding squigs whose leathery hides bear natural camouflage patterns. Imperial xenobiologians have recorded everything from striped or spotted squigs to the rare and alarming cameleo squigs of Groggerbrog 9. Blood Axes are also known on occasion to deploy infamous Squigback Raiders. These highly mobile beast snaggers range far ahead of their parent warbands, often accompanied by airdropped commandos and whirring deathcopters. They work to undermine the foe's rear echelons, raiding targets of opportunity and leaving a trail of devastation behind them that can cause entire enemy offensives to collapse into disarray.
Boss Snikrot, the Green Ghost.
Ghazghkull led us to Armageddon. Ghazghkull told us to stomp the humans and knock the cities down. Where's Ghazghkull now?
Zogged off across the galaxy. When the going got tough, that's where. Don't matter. We ain't going anywhere, lads. And when Armageddon belongs to the Orks, it won't be Ghazghkull's world. It'll be mine. Boss Snikrot.
Boss Snikrot is that most terrifying of things, an orc with an agenda, and the feral intelligence to back it up. Arguably the most cunning, sneaky and vicious orc commando in the galaxy, Snikrot haunts the equatorial jungles of the world of Armageddon. The infamous orc hunters of the Armageddon Imperial Guard fear only one orc. In the dark nights of the equatorial jungles, these grizzled veterans whisper tales of Boss Snikrot, the Stalker. They tell of a killer who can pass through throttle vine groves without disturbing a single leaf, and of his luckless victims, left to bleed to death with their eyes put out and their scalps ripped free. Boss Snikrot was a commando in high regard when Waaagh first fell upon Armageddon. He was amongst the first tribes to navigate the green hell separating Armageddon Prime from Armageddon Secundus. However, when they ran into the jungle defences around Cerberus base, they were all but annihilated. Snikrot pulled his commandos out of the debacle and led them away into the thick jungle, vowing that they would conquer the environment before taking on the Imperial forces. This they did with single-minded focus, becoming one with their savage environs. Snikrot and his lads stripped their kit back to bare essentials. They refined their talents for stealth and sabotage until they were able to slip undetected into Astra Militarum positions, butchering and slitting the throats of all within them. By the time Ghazghkull returned to Armageddon for his second, even greater Waaagh, the Red Skull Commandos, so named for daubing their heads with their victims' blood, were infamous. By this time, the legend of Snikrot had spread to hive cities across the planet's surface. Some spoke of a feral ghost who drank the blood of his prey, while others told of a murderous beast who wore the dog tags of his victims upon his chain-wrapped forearms, the better to whisper their names to the jungle moon. To this day, Snikrot is one of the most feared of all greenskins. Even the orc hunters pray to the Emperor that it is not their necks that the stalker buries his knives into next. Of late, a number of orcs have been given cause to hope for the same thing. With the demons of chaos spilling onto Armageddon, Imperial and Greenskins have been compelled, in extreme cases, to temporarily fight side by side against the greater threat. A true heresy. Snikrot is disgusted by such compromise, and rightly so, seeing it as a weakness, and is quick to punish those Ork leaders guilty of it. More than one knob has been dragged into the shadows, his severed head turning up on a spike shortly afterwards as a warning against mobbing up with Oomies. The Deathskulls clan. Light-fingered loot grabbers. The Deathskulls clan are a superstitious bunch. They put great stock in the old Ork tradition of blue as a lucky colour. In part, this stems from the Deathskulls' acquisitive approach to property, which has led to a wholeheartedly deserved reputation as shifty thieving gits. When one does as much looting as the Deathskulls, a little good luck goes a long way. Deathskull Orks believe possession is 9/10 of the law, while the last 10th, if they can count that high, is violently asserting the first 9. They're insular, sneaky, and utterly amoral. A Deathskull will merrily steal another Ork's favourite shooter, buggy, or whatever, swiftly painted blue, and cobble on a few customizations, then blithely sell it back to the now bereft owner as a brand new piece of kit. It says a great deal for the average intelligence of Orks that, more often than not, Deathskulls do quite well out of such scams. To accuse them of thieving does not end well. More than one Ork has met an unpleasant demise after tussling with a Deathskull, discovering too late that someone has nicked all the pins from the stick bombs in his belt. Due to their acquisitive nature, Deathskulls see battle merely as a necessary step towards the no-holds-barred looting that follows. This is not to say they like a fight any less than other Orks, of course. It's just the Deathskulls will likely be sizing up which tanks, energy weapons and the like they're going to nab the moment the fighting is done. It's not unheard of for a mob of Deathskulls to whip out wrenches and pry bars mid-battle as they begin to rip enemy tanks or fortifications apart for scrap. This proves especially distressing for whatever enemy crew or garrison troops may still be in situ at the time. But copper is at an all-time high. For all their unpopularity with their victims, Deathskulls are a favourite with mechs for the constant stream of loot they bring in. The Deathskulls, for their part, are happy to foster such arrangements. Post-battle, they lash big rusty chains to their wagons and haul burned wrecks and nets of scrap to the nearest mech's workshop. In return, they receive discount rates on custom weaponry and hulking vehicles, all daubed lucky blue, of course. The more adventurous and aggressive mechs gladly join the Deathskulls on the field, often directing mobs of looters and batteries of ramshackle field guns to pulverize the choicest targets. Thus, Deathskull warbands normally boast all manner of madcap mech weaponry, thrumming power fields and teleport tech to back up their grasping aggression. Operate! Operate! Still time to operate. Mad Dok Grotsnik. Grotsnik is a cut-and-dried lunatic and sadist. However, between the personal patronage of Ghazghkull Thraka and his own demented genius, he maintains his macabre reign of terror, despite the many greenskins who would like to see him end up on the wrong end of his own bone saws. Grotsnik always had an unhealthy fascination with rummaging about in other people's heads. This unsavoury inclination brought him untold opportunity one day when an ugly goth orc named Ghazghkull, holding his brain in both hands, staggered into Grotsnik's tent. Grotsnik gleefully fitted his patient with a gleaming adamantine skull. More than this, while busying himself in Ghazghkull's cranium, he may just have triggered the very visions that led to the mighty Goth warlord's rise to power. Notoriety as the orc who made a legend brought Grotsnik both great fortune and even greater peril. He was able to convince the knobs of his tribe to get themselves a Ghazghkull special, becoming rich from fitting metal crania to one hulking brute after another. However, Being both paranoid and an absolute loon, Grotsnik also hid an explosive charge in each of these augmetics, just in case. When his victims found out what had secretly been done to them, they quickly arranged for the Dok to have a nasty accident involving death tread. Some supposedly faulty wiring and a whirring buzzsaw to the bonds. Thanks to spirited, if inexpert, emergency brain surgery from his devoted Grot orderlies, Grotsnik survived. During that long and bloody night, one Gretchen lost his lunch, while elbow deep in Grotsnik's brain pan. The other lost a pet spider that scurried into the warmest, softest place it could find, the Dok's hinged open head. Grotsnik died several times during the procedure, but was brought back to life by an inventively applied grot pod. In the small hours of the morning, Grotsnik staggered out of the tent, clutching his new metal skull plate. He was alive, but quite mad. Filled with manic glee, the Dok danced and sang in the moonlight, grisly explosions playing counterpoint to his operatic efforts as he triggered the knob's explosive craniums one by one. Since that day, Grotsnik has remained in Ghazghkull's shadow and enjoyed the warlord's protection, which enabled him to commit ever greater surgical atrocities. He has transplanted Ork's brains for live squigs. He has taken off several of his own limbs, just to keep his hands in, and replaced them with donations from customers, overcome with generosity while out cold on the slab. After every battle, Grotsnik has his own ghoulish pick of the bodies, leading his personal war band, the Corpse Looters, in the harvest. This macabre warband consists of many Deathskulls, some particularly unhinged pain boys, and a good portion of bad orc freebooters, who will bundle anything or anyone into the Dok's reeking meat wagons, providing they get paid. Grotsnik is particularly proud of the many cyborgs in his warband, as well as the graft customized monsters he calls his Stitch Boys. Grotsnik's ghoulish mania was evident during the fighting on Horzark Prime, when he led his column of meat wagons in a raid against a Vestroyan field Medicae station. Though there were better fights he could have sought, the Dok instead fell upon the ad hoc field hospital with glee. Once its defenders were butchered, he had his followers load up orc and human bodies, dead and wounded alike, before roaring away. What use the twisted Dok could have for comparatively weedy human bodies, not even his orderlies could say. But he took every last one all the same. With Ghazghkull's permission, Grotsnik also takes his pick of the pain boys from each new conquered warband, pressing them into service as orderlies. Invariably, these individuals eventually disappear without a trace. Dark rumours circulate of the gruesome brain bot, in which Grotsnik supposedly preserves the accumulated know wotz of his failed assistants for later reference.
The Snakebite Clan. Always thought about being backward.
A typical snakebite is gnarled, weather-worn and garbed in beast-hide leather. They are as traditional as orcs come, favouring low-tech weapons and war gear, and showing nothing but scorn for anything they see as needlessly newfangled or fiddly. As this encompasses the vast majority of things in the galaxy, the snakebites tend to be grumpy much of the time. It isn't that snakebite orcs cannot or will not use technology. Their clan has its share of mech boys and pain boys, though admittedly they are substantially outnumbered by runt herds and weird boys. It is more that snakebites employ know wotz only grudgingly when they have to, and that they don't consider devices proper until they've built up a patina of rust and oil. Snakebites also prefer a more direct solution wherever one is viable. Why fiddle about, dyeing their beast-hide clothing funny colours, when they can leave them leathery and cure them with squig-off urine? Why build huts when they can just weather the world's storms and prove their resilience in the process? Why mess about with high-tech, chain-cladded choppers that will only get all clogged up with bits of oomy? After all, a solid metal club will bash skull after skull in all day and never run out of fuel. Have to have a truck to ride to battle in? Fine, but any self-respecting snakebite mech will slap it together from scrap iron, bind it with gut twine, and may well end up fitting it with a steam boiler instead of an engine block, if that's more expedient. All this has given the snakebites a reputation as crude savages. This isn't helped by the fact that their warbands seethe with squigs and runts of every stripe. It can't be denied, though, that the snakebites' approach to life renders them as tough as orcs come. They also give rise to the most snagga warbands, the life of a squig-riding nomad who lives off the land, hunts huge, horrible monsters, and clobbers anything that crosses his path, has great appeal to these simple souls. To prove their toughness, all snakebite youths have to endure being bitten by a plethora of deadly venomous snakes. These, their snakebites, breed as selectively and prolifically as their squigs, and often cart them across the stars, from one invaded world to the next. Alarmingly, they also release them into each new local ecosystem, much to the misfortune of absolutely every living thing that already calls the unlucky world home. Feral orcs. Some orcs are driven to leave their tribes and explore, wandering into the wilds. Others are forced to take refuge in dank swamps, deep forests, or baking deserts to avoid the retribution of the planet's defenders should their invasion fail. Either way, these isolated orc enclaves typically devolve to a more primitive state, losing their technology until they are little more than spear-lobbing savages. If not purged quickly, feral orc tribes quickly multiply into seething hordes. As they do so, they develop, some taking to squig breeding and becoming beast snaggers, others picking over the wreck and ruin of old battlefields and rediscovering the know wotz of their ancestors. Soon enough, a burgeoning new war is underway.
Mozrog Skragbad, the Monster Eater.
There's not an orc alive that is as tough and more ruggedly belligerent than Mozrog Skragbad. Boasting a craggier hide than a rock squigs, enough bionics to keep a mob of tin boys operational, and preternatural predatory instincts, he is the epitome of everything the average beast snagger aspires to become. Surly, monosyllabic, and perpetually exasperated, Mozrog always preferred the company of squigs to other greenskins. He spent his days in self-imposed exile, hunting one monstrous beast after another. Mozrog's tribe-mates muttered that so much time alone had sent him a bit funny. But even they couldn't argue with his impressive tally of hunting trophies, so they left him to it. This status quo was broken when Mozrog's tribe joined Waaagh during their invasion of Yawin II, a primordial world of soaring mountains and storm-lashed steppes. Yawin II was the adopted base of a warband of Iron Warriors Chaos Space Marines, whose massed artillery bombardments stirred the planet's titanic megafauna to fury. It was one such beast, a Goliath Gutmaw, that burst from the bedrock to swallow Mozrog whole during one of his hunts. The snakebite steed didn't survive, but by a dubious stroke of fortune, Mozrog himself negotiated the chasm of fangs and lashing tongues. He fetched up alive and very unimpressed, deep within the Gutmaw's immense innards. Stories of Mozrog's survival may have grown in the telling, but conventional wisdom has it that he clawed his way to freedom, killing the beast in the process. It is said that he staggered back into his tribe's camp, half digested, and dragging one of the Gutmaw's punctured eyeballs behind him, like a giant sack full of slime. Impressed and possibly intimidated, Warlord Gobgrinder had the best pain boys rebuild Gozrog with bionics. Known ever after as Skragbad, Mozrog has never been quite the same after his brush with death. He is driven always to seek bigger and nastier quarry, even than the Goliath Gutmaw that almost finished him off. Some orcs say that he can't be killed, others that he will one day hunt the stars themselves. Whatever the truth, Mozrog now has to tolerate entire war bands of imitators, hangers-on and potential rivals, trailing him on his hunts and hoping to share in the glory of each fresh kill. So great has his following become that they often represent entire beast snagger war bands in their own right.
The big chomper, the untamable squig,
The bad beast of scrap mud, that thing what ate Boss Norbag's buggy. Big Chomper had many names before he became Mozrog's steed, along with a reputation for being the meanest and most savage creature ever to crawl from the drops. Some say that one glare from Mozrog was enough to quell this indomitable monster. The truth is that he spent 3 solid days bludgeoning, wrestling, chasing, and then generally belabouring Big Chomper before the Alpha Squigosaur finally deigned to be ridden. Since that day, of course, Mozrog and his steed are never seen apart. That said, this is due in large part to the sheer bloody carnage Big Chomper wreaks if his long-suffering master leaves him unsupervised for more than a minute.
Zodgrod Wortsnagga, Rump Boss for our.
Most orcs consider runts to be a waste of space and effort. Good only for those tasks they can't be bothered with, or for eating. Not so Zodgrod Wortsnagga. This wild-eyed wanderer knows the secrets of breeding the best and baddest runts, and sells his peculiar services to the highest bidder. Runt herds are considered a bit peculiar. They hang about with runts, attempting to train and corral the little sneaks, instead of cuffing them bloody on a whim. A runt herd keeps oral histories, has little time for know what's, and comes across just a bit too surly to join in with their fellows' riotous behaviour. Then there's the antisocial habit of smearing themselves in reeking squig dung, the better to avoid getting eaten when clambering through the beast's pens. For all this, orcs tolerate most runt herds, even affording them an odd sort of respect, if only because, for all their peculiarities, they keep the tribe's grots and snots out from underfoot. Zodgrod Wortsnagga, however, is a different case entirely. Zodgrod always had odd ideas. He was convinced that runts, and to a lesser extent squigs, could be trained. Using jingling bells, tasty fungal treats, and an array of pain boy brewed serums, he managed to propagate superior grots, snots, and a variety of squig breeds. Zodgrod's menagerie were bigger, stronger, and more aggressive. They demonstrated frankly alarming levels of problem-solving abilities, and obeyed his commands with such loyalty that he barely ever had to apply the business end of his grot prod. Sadly for Zodgrod, orcs are rarely open to new ideas, and few amongst his tribe had the wisdom to see the value in his so-called super runts. Every time another of Zodgrod's pedigree squigs vanished under the wheels of some cackling speed freak, was sat on by a disinterested knob or shot, dismembered or devoured by other orcs just for the hell of it, Zodgrod became more withdrawn, isolated, and embittered. He finally cracked one day, when a big mech from his tribe named Osmog started indiscriminately launching super runs through his shock attack gun's tunnel, just to get his eye in. The rest of the tribe was highly impressed with the fashion in which Zodgrod overpowered Osmog, and curious as to how precisely the runt herd had crunched his victim down small enough to fire him from his own weapon. None of this was enough to spare Zodgrod and his surviving super runts from being exiled. This was, ironically, the best thing that could have happened to Zodgrod. Freed from the constraints of normal orc society, he embraced a freebooting life. and sold his runt wrangling skills to those tribes with the smarts to see their use. Admittedly, such customers were rare at first. Zodgrod persisted, though, spending his teeth on ever more outlandish serums to bolster the abilities and aggression of his super runts. He also invested in a piston-powered grabber-stick come overcharged grot prod he called his Grab Zapper, and in a series of increasingly powerful combi-needle sluggers he called his Squig Stoppers. He is currently up to the 5th iteration of this potent firearm, able to shoot his victims full of a bewildering range of specially tailored knockout serums. These may well work better thanks to Zodgrod's fervent conviction in them, rather than any actual science. Even the densest warboss can now see the worth of Zodgrod as a man-eyed and lethal mercenary for hire. Once they've witnessed his hyper-metabolized super runts overrun the enemy in a froth-jawed tide, pilot killer cans with terrifying ferocity, or lay down a double-speed barrage from their overheating mech guns, Zodgrod can virtually name his price.
The Goff Clan. Big, mean, and black and green.
The Goff Clan are the biggest and surliest of a big and surly species. They wear black, considering anything brighter to betoken unnecessary messing about, and wear horned helms, the better for head-butting anything stupid enough to get in their way. These two details exemplify everything one needs to know about the Goff Clan and their no-nonsense approach to war. Goffs prefer to fight on foot, typically in huge ground-pounding mobs, somewhere between a military formation and an all-out riot. They always bully their way to the front of the charge, their eagerness to get stuck in, eclipsing minor considerations like personal safety. Overt belligerence in the face of imminent peril is actually such a point of pride to the Goffs that they have been known to take their choppers to anyone using terms such as "take cover" or
"maybe we should think about this" in their presence.
Despite their preference to hit enemy lines in a rolling tsunami of bellowing warriors, the Goffs are not above hitching a lift aboard a battle wagon or speeding truck, provided it will get them into the fight faster. They equally have a soft spot for death dreads, Gorkanauts and Stompers, all of which can easily trample their way into the fray with metal fists swinging. In terms of weaponry, Goffs prefer a good solid chopper and a gun that fires as many shells per minute as possible, preferably while sounding an unholy din. Power claws also feature strongly amongst their ranks. For what self-respecting Goff could resist wielding an even bigger fist with which to crump his unsuspecting enemies? Goff Clan warbands make prodigious use of Stormboy cores. It is an irony utterly lost on the traditionalist Goffs that the very nature of their clan spawns such a high proportion of youths, Ork youngsters, seeking to rebel through excessive boot polishing, parade drills, and aggressive saluting. Still, when several dozen hurtling Goff Orks strapped to rocket packs lead the charge, it is hard not to see why the peculiar Stormboys retain such favour with their clanmates. Beyond this, though, Goffs harbour a deep distrust for anything they see as mucking about. Broadly speaking, this incorporates particularly flashy and unpredictable technologies, and anything other races would describe as strategy or tactics. The Goffs pride themselves on being the orkiest of orcs, and will gladly seize on any excuse to prove their claim with feet, fists, tusks, and choppers. The rate of attrition amongst Goff orcs is nothing short of apocalyptic. Those who make it through the headbutting contests and pit fights typically don't survive their first few battles, amid headlong charges into enemy guns. Those who do, though, grow rapidly bigger and wear their scars and bionics with arrogance and pride. Not only does this lead to an overabundance of Goff knobs, and to the clan producing some of the galaxy's most brutal war bosses, but it also sees entire mobs of Scar Boys take to the field, These boys swagger about, covered in hard-earned battle scars and big, rusty metal staples, each one a trophy of their formidable prowess at shrugging off catastrophic injuries whilst beating their enemies to a pulp.
Boss Zagstruk, the boss. I don't know, we have been told Stormboy mobs is mighty bold. We're the hardest of the lot. We make yous lot look like grots.
Stormboy drill chant. A merciless killer and a fanatical disciplinarian, Boss Zagstruk is the feared leader of a band of Stormboys known as the Vulture Squad. He despises weakness and loves nothing more than bullying those smaller than him into doing precisely what they are told. He is a holy terror whose mood swings between foul temper and murderous fury at the slightest provocation. The rumour goes that Zagstruk was born in the centre of a human settlement, and that he quickly throttled his way across the hinterlands to his parent tribe. His warriors say that every day of his life, Zagstruk has made at least one kill. Certainly, he looks for any excuse for a fight. Zagstruk's ferocious glare is enough to cow almost any orc into submission, and he has been known to stop a rampaging squig-off in its tracks. The Vulture Squad held their leader in high esteem and, while as dense as any other orcs, have the sense to fear his famous rages. The boss, as his disciples call him, never lowers his voice below a shout, and executes any greenskin showing insubordination or cowardice on the spot. So fearsome has the boss's reputation grown, and so ambitious has he become since Gork's grin split the stars, that he now leads a war band as big as any war boss's. He has also become Lord and Master of the conquered St. Resmund's Hope, a former shrine world known as Planet Zag. This world boasts enough military encampments, parade grounds, and mechs workshops to satisfy even the most demanding of Blood Axe war bosses. It also features a formerly holy mountain, now graven by captive imperial sculptors into a titanic likeness of Zagstruk's snarling face. In Zagstruk's horde, the Vulture Squad stand front and centre, riding into battle aboard a massive red fighter bomber called the Vulture. Led by the boss, the elite Stormboys leap from this thundering behemoth's bomb bays and directly into battle, hurtling down into the midst of the foe like a salvo of air-to-ground missiles. This signature attack is made all the more devastating by Zagstruk's own war gear, the bionics known as the Vulture's Claws. These piston-driven and power-clawed augmetic legs enhance Zagstruk's already formidable strength to the extent that, when he plummets down to make contact with the enemy, it is inevitably with a sickening crunch. We shall be discussing the life and career of Ghazghkull Thraka momentarily, but the following orc campaigns should prove enlightening for those who wish to understand the greenskin mind.
Tuska, the Demon Killer.
Late in 892, M41, the planet Prosan, neighbour of the fortress world Cadian, was invaded by a great host of orcs commanded by Great Boss Tuska. As the orc fleet entered the Cadian system, the Imperial Navy moved to intercept it. They slowed the green-skinned juggernaut, but ultimately could not stop it. The orc fleet ploughed through the Cadian blockade, losing a full third of its number in the process. When the orc armada descended upon the world of Prosan, the Imperial High Command feared that the Cadian Gate was going to witness a full-scale Waaagh. Prosan was a hostile environment training ground, a world with no strategic value, and a great many dangers. Its already volatile climate had been enhanced, specifically so that the Cadians could train in the most inhospitable battleground conditions. Acid rain fell in great squalls, lava burst in sudden gouts from sharp volcanic rocks, and tornadoes raged across the violet skies. What the Orks wanted with the battered and worthless planet of Prosan was a mystery. For 13 days, the commanders of Cadia looked on in puzzlement as the Orks poured wave after wave of troops onto Prosan. Those Imperial Guard regiments that were planet-side at the time fought hard, their training giving them a natural advantage over the aliens. Great boss Tuska seemed hell-bent on conquering the planet, however, and his elite infantry seemed to relish the challenge. If anything, the hostile conditions only seemed to make the Greenskins fight all the harder. Within a month, the Imperial armies were forced to evacuate, leaving Prosan in the hands of the Orks. The Imperial Navy re-established their cordon and prepared to fight to the last. That would not prove necessary, however. The Orks left Prosan as suddenly as they had arrived. To the astonishment of the entire Cadian system, the Ork fleet made straight for the swirling, bleeding vortex that lay beyond the Cadian gate, and disappeared into the depths of the Eye of Terror. 2 years before the invasion of Prosan, Great Boss Tuska's flagship, Gorjaw, had been invaded by a demonic entity as it carved its path through the warp. Tuska liked nothing more than pitting his strength against something larger than he was and coming out on top, and was famous for his many battlefield trophies. When Tuska learned that a towering, many-headed nightmare was slaughtering its way through his crew, he strapped on his power claw and sprinted towards the sounds of battle, bellowing his war cry. Great Boss Tuska was most impressed by the violence that greeted him when he found the blood-slicked monstrosity that was butchering its way through his knobs. Still, Tuska was an Ork war boss and would not back down, especially not on his home turf. He met the beast head-to-head upon the Gorjaw's bridge. The resultant clash between Ork and Daemon was titanic, but when the fighting was over, Tuska had a new set of horns with which to adorn his trophy rack. In fighting the warp beast, Tuska had come closer to death than ever before. He had enjoyed it tremendously. Tuska swore a great oath to find more warp creatures to fight, to lead his boys into the ultimate war against foes more powerful than any other. So it was that Waaagh Tuska was born. Upon translation to the material universe, the great boss rounded up as many weird boys as he could, and ordered his fleet to make straight for Cadia. After a brief warm-up upon Prosan to get his boys used to really hostile conditions, he intended to steer the Ork fleet into the heart of chaos beyond the Cadian Gate. There, Tuska believed they would fight a fiercer war than any other, and more exciting than anything they had ever done. In many ways, he was right. Tuska's fleet made the normally violent transition to warp space with suspicious ease. His pet weird boys warned that it was far easier to sail into the Eye of Terror than escape from its grasp. But this did not deter Tuska for one moment. His fleet cut through shimmering nebulas of thought and roiling seas of emotion as the Orks searched for something to destroy. They came upon worlds of flickering crystal, forbidden paradises, jungles of gibbering corpses, and great orbs of pure force that crackled and spat as the Orks made planetfall. Each world was more peculiar than the last, and they witnessed sights that would have driven a human insane many times over. Yet Tuska cared little. His Orks destroyed everything in their path. On a world carpeted with sore-pocked gargoyles that gasped and writhed underfoot, dripping tongues rose up to stab at the Ork invaders with their barbed tips. Tuska and his lads took their choppers to anything that so much as twitched. On a world sculpted from living silk, long-limbed temptresses sought to beguile the Ork warriors marching upon their fluted palaces. The she-demons were met with an unrelenting wall of bullets and blades. On a world cut like a gem from solid thought, the Orks smashed their way through scintillating labyrinths with iron-shod boots and horned helmets. Impossible architecture was thrown down, half-real relics were crunched underfoot, enchanting worshippers were massacred. Though he was losing more and more Orks with each twisted world he visited, Tuska was having the time of his life. The true test of Tuska's might was yet to come. Making planetfall upon a world the colour of fresh blood, the Orks splashed through a thick gruel of gore in search of an enemy. None came forth. What was left of Tuska's warband waded towards the lights of battle that they could see on the horizon, but came no closer. Perhaps Tuska's Waaagh would have ended there, had he not fired his shooter at the ground in frustration. The planet's crust, textured like flesh meat below the blood slicks, flinched at Tuska's outburst. It was all the sign the Orks needed. At Tuska's command, they began slicing, chopping, and firing at the surface of the world itself. The crimson-black skies above began to resound with an angry roar. The planet was soon to show its displeasure in a far deadlier way. Forming out of the blood slicks were jagged beasts of sinew and rage, clothed only in flitting wisps of murderous intent. The demon things charged screaming into the ranks of the Orks, and as the greenskins lost more and more of their number, they realized they had finally met their match. Great Boss Tuska was undaunted, and lay about himself with Power Claw and Chopper. Without warning, the ground below Tuska's feet split open, and something huge and terrible pulled itself from the beating heart of the planet. Though Tuska did not know it, he had attracted the attention of the Blood Prince, lord of the world on which the Orks had trespassed. It smiled at the greenskins before it, revealing a mouthful of fangs that would have made a Bad Moon jealous. More open, impossibly wide, the demon charged. The Warlord and the Blood Thing duelled for hours, but it soon became plain that the demon was only toying with Tuska. The boys had been decimated, and Tuska was bleeding from dozens of deep wounds. Eventually, Tuska was impaled through the gut by his adversary and pinned to the ground by its cloven hoof. In triumph, the Blood Prince screamed its praise to Khorne, but while it was distracted, the Warband's remaining Weird Boys unleashed a storm of psychic energy upon the demon. It roared in rage at their impudence, crushing their minds with a gesture. With this final act, Tuska reached up between the creature's legs with his Power Claw and made a gesture of his own. But Tuska's story does not end there. With every new dawn upon the Blood World, Tuska and his boys find themselves whole again. They fight their way across the gory swamps in an eternal cycle of battle and death, puppets of the Lord of Battles, until the end of time. In many ways, Tuska had come home.
Told you I knew where the best fighting was.
Great Boss Tuska.
The War of Dakka.
Ork warlords fighting against the nascent empire of the Tau have often found themselves sorely outgunned. This is very irritating for the Orks involved, and sometimes even results in a greenskin retreat, the warlords muttering to themselves that the Tau have no idea how to fight proper. One exception is Waaagh, a crusade of vengeance that extended deep into the territory of the renegade Tau commander Farsight. Grog Ironteeth, the war chief of Alsanta, had become one of the Tau Empire's most deadly foes. His fleet engaged the Kroot war spheres, drifting through the space lanes of Dal'Eth. Grog had found that the Kroot made excellent opponents. They were mercenary aliens who preferred to engage at close quarters, and they could be relied upon to provide the vicious brawls upon which the Orks thrive. Just as the two races were settling in for a protracted campaign of head-bashing, the Tau came to the aid of their Kroot allies and ruined everything. Grog was furious. He declared war upon the Tau, determined to show them that the Orks were not to be trifled with. Unfortunately, the war chief's initial invasions of the Tau Sepworlds did not go according to plan. His armies were outclassed and outgunned again and again. Though he had an empire's worth of Orks to throw into battle, he found that their numbers were being whittled away with worrying speed. Grog decided to take a different tack, enlisting the help of as many tank busters, flashgits, and freebooters as he could, including the mercenary Kaptin Badrukk. The war chief outgunned his armies and prepared to do battle once more. Grog encountered even fiercer resistance as he penetrated the Farsight Enclaves to the north of the Tau Empire. This time, however, he was more than ready. Looters, toting crackling death guns converted from captured Tau weaponry, exchanged lethal volleys of fire with the Tau gun lines. Battle wagons and looted hammerhead tanks pounded the massed ranks of the Tau fire warriors with heavy munitions as Grog and his boys stomped towards the enemy gun line. Deathcopters corkscrewed through the skies in aerial battles with battlesuit teams, preventing them from disengaging. Most impressive of all, Kaptin Badrukk and his flashkits lit up the night, annihilating team after team of desperate Tau warriors with their snaz guns. The carnage was only stopped by the arrival of the Manta missile destroyer OS Porkoyon, which mercilessly cut down the flashkits in a volley of railgun fire. Badly wounded and out of cigars, the captain was forced to retreat. It is rumoured that Badrukk pursues that great and graceful ship to this day, hell-bent on revenge. Perhaps if the Tau had adhered to their usual hidden-run tactics, they would still have carried the day, but Commander Farsight was known for his aggression and martial pride. The bloodiest battle was yet to come. As the battle for the northern enclaves escalated, Grog embarked on perhaps the cunningest plan yet. Central to the plan was the concept of retreat, a tactic all but unheard of in Ork culture. If it weren't for the large number of Bloodaxe war bosses in Grog's employ, he would never have carried it off. As the forces of Commander Farsight pressed forward, the Ork front line fell back, hooting and hollering and clutching their heads. The Tau forces, caught in the jubilation of the hunt, overextended themselves. Suddenly, the remainder of the Ork force ambushed them from either side, closing in upon the Ork hunter cadres like a pair of giant green jaws. The Tau High Command was shocked to the core. Their forces had been outmaneuvered and trapped by the brutish alien invaders. They scrambled reinforcements to evacuate Commander Farsight, but Grog's war machine was in the ascendant. The war chief and his boys pursued the retreating Tau back to their base, burning it to the ground and looting as many Tau weapons as they could. With every bit of Dakka they found, Grog's boys became more of a threat, and soon they were tooled up with more high-powered weaponry than even the greediest flashkit could wish for. The tide had turned, and it was not likely to turn back. Since that day, many more warbands have flocked to the war chief's banner. Grog has taken 3 Sepworlds in the space of a year, locked in a war of attrition that the Orks can afford, but the Tau cannot. No matter how many times Farsight and his cadres cut down the Orks, more follow close behind as new armies of greenskins make their slow but deadly approach. This is the nature of the greenskin culture. Once word spreads of a good fight, peace becomes a distant memory. So it is that the Tau Sepworlds are constantly embattled by the greenskins of the Eastern Fringe. Their fight for expansion, now a simple war for survival.
Ghazghkull Thraka, the Grand Warlord, Prophet of Gork and Mork. I'm the hand of Gork and Mork. I'm the prophet of the Waaagh. And all worlds burn in my bootprints. We is gonna stomp the universe flat and kill anything that fights back. We's gonna do this 'cause we's Orks. And we was made to fight and win.
Grand Warlord Ghazghkull Thraka. Abridged quotation. Ghazghkull Thraka is a mighty prophet of the Waaagh, capable of rousing entire planetary populations of Orks into a frenzy of conquest and bloodshed. He is the single most influential greenskin in the galaxy, and billions march to war in his name. Even more terrifying, since his near death on Krongar, Ghazghkull has returned bigger and badder than ever before. Ghazghkull started his career as a common Goff warrior on the backwater planet of Urk. During a raid upon a Space Marine command sanctum, Ghazghkull caught a bolter shell to the face that pulped a large area of his cranium and caused extensive brain damage. A Deathskulls pain boy by the name of Mad Dok Grotsnik was close to hand, and replaced part of Ghazghkull's cerebrum with bionics made from adamantine. This experimental augmentation had two distinct side effects, besides preventing Ghazghkull's demise. Firstly, it afforded even greater protection to what was left of his brain. Secondly, and most crucially for the wider galaxy, Grotsnik's surgery also triggered something deep within Ghazghkull's mind. A manic new glint had entered his blood-red eyes. Fresh drive and ambition invigorated his formerly unremarkable existence. Ghazghkull claimed to be receiving visions sent by Gork and Mork themselves, visions that urged him on to power and conquest. From that day, Ghazghkull's rise to power was meteoric. Those orcs of Urk who didn't fall in line were rapidly bludgeoned into submission. Ghazghkull had brawn and belligerence enough to establish his dominance over the entire world. Few of his subjects gave much thought as to whether their new warlord was really talking to the gods, or was simply a delusional megalomaniac. When the planet's star began to flicker and perish, Ghazghkull hailed this as a sign from Gork and Mork that it was time for the Waaagh to depart this world and stomp the galaxy flat. By some dark quirk of fortune, Ghazghkull and his hordes were able to capture and board the Space Hulk World Killer in their moment of need, and set off across the stars, bursting into real space after an anarchic span of time spent in the warp. Waaagh Ghazghkull emerged into a rich and prosperous imperial system. They wasted no time in falling upon its capital world, Armageddon, a world that would make Ghazghkull's name. The world of Armageddon was a rich hub of commerce, military industry and transportation that lay upon a key warp route towards the Segmentum Solar. It was well resourced and heavily defended by naval assets, regiment upon regiment of the Astra Militarum, and a mighty complement of the Iron Skull's Titan Legion. For all this, Armageddon wasn't ready for Ghazghkull. Not only did the visionary warlord have immense numbers and overwhelming momentum on his side, Armageddon's planetary governor, Hermann von Strab, was also a disastrously incompetent egomaniac. Strab's piecemeal attempts to deal with what he sneeringly viewed as the Ork irritant, while keeping up appearances with the wider Imperium, played right into Ghazghkull's jagged claws. Waaagh Ghazghkull rampaged across the continent of Armageddon Prime, crushing each regiment of planetary defenders and cannibalizing their wrecked tanks as one bastion after another fell. Still, Strab did not send for aid. Instead, this duty was taken up by a redoubtable Imperial Commissar named Yarrick, an act of disobedience for which he was exiled to remote Hive Hades. Meanwhile, Ghazghkull's hordes crossed the green hell of Armageddon's equatorial jungles, where Strab had claimed they would not tread. Having reached the continent of Armageddon Secundus, they crushed the Iron Skull's titans and left their graffiti-scrawled wreckage to burn. Ghazghkull himself led the storming of Hive Infernus. Just as the season of storms descended, he loosed wild warbands of speed freaks into the ash wastes to hunt down refugees and retreating Imperial military assets as they tried to reach the safety of Hive cities further south. In desperation, Strab unleashed his ancient stockpile of virus bombs. But amidst the tight-packed battlefields of Armageddon Secundus, human casualties from these indiscriminate weapons were as severe as those suffered by the Orks. All the while, Ghazghkull drove his Waaagh onward with unbreakable determination, crushing Hive Hell's Reach despite the suicidal charge of the city's defenders. Then came the siege of Hades Hive, and, with it, a sudden change in the fortunes of war. Under the leadership of the exiled Commissar Yarrick, Hades Hive's defenders fought as if possessed. So spectacular was the battle, so slow the Ork advance, that Ghazghkull came to lead the siege in person. Showing cunning far in excess of the average Goff warlord, Ghazghkull employed all the tactics and stratagems he could dream up. But Yarrick countered each new threat. Orks fought volunteer defense militia along every processional, at every barricade, and even through the hive's myriad ducts and crawlways. In Yarrick, Ghazghkull had met an enemy worth the fight. The Grand Warlord swiftly became obsessed with defeating this tenacious and respected foe. Obsession is both the strength and weakness of the Orks. The same tendencies that make them relentless foes, reckless pilots, and prolific, if manic, inventors, also lead them to ruin. So it was with Ghazghkull at Hive Hades. The meat grinder around the besieged hive sucked in ever more Ork material and warriors, leaving those warbands assailing Hive Tartarus and Hive Acheron ill-directed and short of reinforcements. When Imperial support showed up in the form of Ultramarines, Salamanders, and Blood Angel Space Marines, the secondary Ork hordes could not hold. Even beset, as the Greenskins were by the freshly arrived Adeptus Astartes, Ghazghkull did not give up. He proved his superiority to most Greenskins by recognizing the damage his obsession had caused, and setting plans in motion to redress the balance. Now, though, he faced the unified, strategic brilliance of Blood Angel's commander Dante and his allied Space Marine commanders. Coupled with Yarrick's hideously costly defense of the ruined Hive Hades, Ghazghkull's Waaagh was at last broken. Nearly every Ork warlord in history has gone down fighting alongside their warband. Not so Ghazghkull. He fled Armageddon, leaving the world infested with scattered greenskins, and vowing one day to return. After all, Armageddon had put up the best fight Ghazghkull had ever experienced. He wasn't about to pass up a chance to enjoy that all over again. Withdrawing to his stronghold in the Golgotha sector, Ghazghkull marshalled his strength once more, and dwelt on what he had learned from his first invasion of Armageddon. The Ork gods had revealed to Ghazghkull that in order to destroy your foe, you must first know him. For Ghazghkull, the war for Armageddon had been a way to learn how the Imperium would react and deal with a major invasion. Over the next few years, Ghazghkull allied with warlord Nazdreg Ug Urdgrub, combining forces to make a devastating assault on the imperial planet of Pesina IV. This was no normal invasion, however. Nazdreg, a Bad Moon war boss possessed of incredible wealth and cunning, had some of the finest mechs in the galaxy in his employ. These mechs had pioneered a type of teleportation device that enabled Nazdreg to maneuver his troops directly onto the planet from his space hulk, even when it was located a massive distance away from the planet. Ghazghkull saw the revolutionary potential of these teleporters, and joined forces with Nazdreg to test it on an unsuspecting planet. The Imperial forces there were taken completely by surprise, and the planet was brought to its knees. Only the mysterious presence of Space Marines from the Dark Angels chapter saved Pesina from being overrun completely by the Greenskin armies. The Dark Angels suffered a string of bitter defeats at the hands of Ghazghkull's forces, culminating in a breathtaking duel at Calidus Harbour between the Ork Warlord and the Grand Master of the Deathwing. Though Ghazghkull all but broke Grand Master Belial in two, the Deathwing forces had brought enough time for the rest of the Dark Angels to arrive. Pesina was saved, but Ghazghkull already had his prize. Striking a deal with Nazdreg, Ghazghkull left the Bad Moon Warlord to continue the war for Pesina, in return for his best mech and the secrets of his teleporters. The Prophet of the Waaagh had work to do. Ghazghkull left Pesina for the Golgotha system, unaware that Yarrick had located him and was hot on his heels. Golgotha was a mining planet, rich in material wealth, The Ork warlord intended to seize the planet and convert it into a giant ammunition factory, fueling a second Waaagh into the Armageddon sector. Using his teleporters to make a series of lightning strikes, Ghazghkull quickly overcame the war engines and battle colossi of the planet's abhuman defenders. Within weeks, the sheer might of the massed orcs and gargants of Ghazghkull's armies had battered the planet's defences into rubble. Arriving at the climax of the battle for Golgotha, Commissar Yarrick led a squadron of Baneblade super-heavy tanks into the fray, intending to hunt down Ghazghkull and leave the Ork armies leaderless. Even these metal behemoths were not enough to stop the beast of Armageddon. The tank squadron was overrun and surrounded by Ghazghkull's evil Sunz allies. Yarrick was crushed under the tracks of the battle fortress Doomroller, and his unconscious body was brought before Ghazghkull himself. After a few weeks of inflicting idle torture, Ghazghkull decided that Commissar Yarrick was too good an enemy to waste. He released him from the stinking dungeons of his space hulk, because he intended to invade Armageddon once more and wanted a good fight when he got there. A plan 50 years in the making was about to reach fruition. War would come once more to Armageddon, and this time it would be there to stay. Makari. If a monster as terrifying as Ghazghkull could be said to have anything approaching a soft spot, it is for his favoured banner-waving grot, Makari. This pugnacious little runt has stood by Ghazghkull's side for a remarkable count of years, hefting his boss's Waaagh banner and waving it about as enthusiastically as his skinny little arms allow. Ghazghkull takes a perverse pride in Makari's longevity and preposterous good fortune. The number of enemies that have slipped in oil or had their weapons malfunction just as they were about to squash Ghazghkull's pet grot defies explanation. That said, what no orc has the heart, or indeed nerve, to tell the Grand Warlord is that even Makari didn't last forever. At last tally, several dozen Makaris have trotted obediently behind Ghazghkull into the fires of battle, and each time one perishes, sat on by a squig-off, caught in a death-strike missile blast, or simply keeling over from old age, they are quietly and forcibly replaced before Ghazghkull has a chance to notice his tragic loss. Disturbingly, it is possible that they are actually reincarnations of the original Makari, but that is a subject that I am not going to tackle now, or probably ever, because it's silly. 57 years to the day after his defeat on Armageddon, Ghazghkull returned at the head of a still more enormous Waaagh. The planet's defenders had spent decades rebuilding and fortifying against the coming of the Grand Warlord, who they now knew as the Beast of Armageddon. Yet Ghazghkull had also been far from idle. He had spent years fighting one brutal conflict after another, both to subjugate rival warbands and also to test and perfect strange new weapon technologies, against which his enemies could not hope to be prepared. Many and exhaustive are the accounts of the conflict that followed. Ghazghkull brought a war that his enemies and even a number of his own underlings were utterly wrong-footed by. The Grand Warlord had mercenary freebooters strike at agri-worlds and shipping around Armageddon, both to choke off supply routes and to spread terror at his approach. He hit the system with multiple, roughly coordinated Ork fleets, the better to encircle and destroy the naval defences. Rather than get drawn into another fight for Hive Hades, Ghazghkull had his space hulks deploy tractor beams, using them to ensnare asteroids before releasing them on Hades from low orbit. He unleashed drop fortresses known as rocks, built scrap iron submersibles to cross the planet's storm-lashed oceans, and directed super teleporters to beam towering war effigies directly into battle. For all this, the Imperium hurled in tides of reinforcements. The battle for Armageddon became an endless grinding war of attrition, despite all Ghazghkull's best efforts. And as the conflict ground ever on, So the Grand Warlord suffered increasingly painful and garish visions sent by Gork and Mork. And then, with no warning at all, Ghazghkull was simply gone. Some say the Grand Warlord experienced an almighty megavision, in which Gork and Mork charged him with a new task. Others say the great green gods plucked Ghazghkull up and cast him across the stars as a spur to action. Others still claim he was simply struck by inspiration and ambition, or, according to official yet absurdly unlikely Imperial propaganda, that he simply turned tail and fled. Whatever the case, Ghazghkull's departure from Armageddon appears to have come just before Gork's grin split the galaxy. After it did, strange reports started to reach Imperial sources of the Beast of Armageddon, leading planetary invasions in sectors many light years away. Surely, said those few observers with the ability to piece the reports together, some accounts had to be mistaken. There was no way Ghazghkull could be in so many places at once. In defiance of all logic, however, the attacks continued. What no one yet realized was that Ghazghkull had embarked upon his greatest plan to date. He no longer led a Waaagh, but rather the Great Waaagh. He had set himself against not a single world, nor even a system or species, but the entire galaxy. And in order to fight and beat every last sentient being that could be found amongst the stars, he planned to gather the totality of the Ork species to his boss pole, or die trying. Since Ghazghkull began this seemingly impossible endeavor, strange things have been occurring. More Ork Waaghs than ever before are springing up, with a disproportionate number travelling unerringly towards wherever Ghazghkull is at that moment. Of course, with the Grand Warlord plunging in and out of Gork's grin like a lunatic, this has still seen many Ork tribes rampaging back and forth across the stars, in a seemingly random and anarchic fashion. Yet gradually, more and more Orks are rallying to Ghazghkull's side. With each fresh influx, he clobbers whatever big brute warlord seeks to challenge him, and folds their followers into his own ranks. Even those who seek to stop Ghazghkull's rampage only seem to lend him more impetus. Every rival he beats down increases his notoriety. When worlds such as Karaheim and Obstanasis put up resolute defense against his invading hordes, Ghazghkull only won greater renown when he finally crushed them. Rumor has it that the Eldari of Craftworld Aliatok and the Savage Warriors of the Space Wolves chapter have both taken their turn in striking at the Grand Warlord in the hopes of slaying him, and thus breaking his great Waaagh. The latter came closest to achieving their aim. The mighty Wolflord, Ragnar Blackmane, met Ghazghkull in battle upon the hive world of Krongar, almost sealing both combatants' mutual destruction. Yet even as the broken Blackmane was being borne across the Rubicon Primaris, following his crippling injuries, so was Mad Dok Grotsnik recapitating his beloved warlord onto a mighty, now super Ork body that he had spent many decades perfecting. So it is that Ghazghkull Thraka is now bigger and more terrifying than ever, boasting an armoured bulk more akin to a Gorkanaut than a war boss. Ghazghkull also wields weaponry to match. Gork's claw is so vast that its blades can enfold a fully armoured space marine and slice them neatly into steaming chunks. Mork's roar, his custom shooter, generates so much Dakka that its victims don't so much die as simply evaporate into a red haze. Ghazghkull is a living war engine, a walking embodiment of Gork and Mork, and the greatest prophet of the Waaagh to bestride the stars in millennia. He is coming for the entire galaxy, and some begin to fear that it's a fight he just might win. And once more, it is the world of Armageddon which will see this mighty conflict resolved between humanity and orc kind. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back again next week with a new lore video. If you're after any more orc content, there's plenty on the channel. I'll include a comment in the comment section listing out some of the more prominent ones, like Sanctus Reach, the Gork and Mork video, excellent to get even more in-depth understanding of the orcs and their society and how it functions. And like the Battle of Rinswell. There's a bunch of videos I've put out. I think I still need to upload a couple of the old ones as well, like the Praetorian Guard one, because that's mostly about them fighting the orcs on this planet. You know, the Battle of Big Tooth River and all that. But yeah, this is a great one. Because Armageddon's coming out, obviously, because we're going back to Armageddon for the 11th edition, I thought it was the best time to get this in. I still do not agree that it was a good idea to have them put Ragnar fighting Ghazghkull and chopping his head off. I think that was silly. But, you know, we are where we are. We are where we are. It looks good, though. You know, the Yarrick trailer was fantastic, and I love Commissar Yarrick, obviously. Be nice if the Steel Legion were around, but, you know, again, we are where we are. New stuff, though, coming every week. I do hope you've enjoyed this, really, really, I do. And you seem to, the last couple of new videos have been going down well. We stopped the re-uploads. Like I said, I know I just said a minute ago I need to re-upload a few more, but I'll leave that for a while, and we'll just do new stuff for the next couple of months, probably. I mean, I've got a big list of all the videos I want to do, so you should enjoy them. Yeah, let me know in the comments what you thought, and do let me know in the comments what you thought, and leave me a comment, leave a like, leave a hype if you can. I'd massively appreciate that. I'm still in Algo jail, but I'm just about coming out of it, and all your support massively helps. And if you would like to support the channel, chill, please consider becoming a channel member. Please consider becoming a patron on Patreon, or just send me a super thanks or anything. I don't know. I'm not proud. I'll accept anything. You know, I'm not going to refund you and send it back and say, oh no, I don't need that. I do need it. Give me. I deserve it. You got to support the channel, boys. Anyway, I'll come back with a new video next weekend. It will be a lore-related, well, of course it will be a lore-related video. I think it'll be like a campaign. I don't know which one I'm going to do first. I've got two that I want to do, like, immediately. I'm just not too sure which one to do next. We'll see. Thank you all for watching. See you next time. May the Emperor protect. Definitely leave me a like, though. If you're not going to support the channel, the very least you can do is leave me a like and a comment. And share it with all your friends. And hype me. And subscribe and hit the bell. Anyway, bye-bye. May the Emperor protect.